Good evening, everyone. If you do want to hear about Cognac and the conference, please come talk to me. It's a fantastic story, mostly about this man. I wanted to start by thanking Tom and Ria for inviting me to speak at this conference. It's lovely to be here. And I'll talk about curiosity, of course, but also want to connect it to ideas of cooperation, collaboration, and creativity. So as I started thinking about these three topics, all really exciting. I had never done any research on curiosity. And I started digging up and trying to find some research papers, talks that I could learn from. And I came across one that I found really interesting from someone who I've read and who I've admired for a long time. And he had, in one of his papers, actually it was a script from a talk that he delivered at Carnegie Mellon. And he starts off in this talk by saying, I want to thank my mother and father for teaching me that curiosity is the beginning of all science. And this person is Herbert Simon. Herbert Simon was an economist, but did cognitive science. He's also considered to be the father of artificial intelligence, AI, which Abby just talked about. He won the Nobel Prize for Economics in 1978, I think. Anyway, so Herbert Simon has written about a myriad of things. And in this talk, in this script, he talks about curiosity. And when he mentions curiosity, it's not just the natural sciences, it's not just engineering. He talks about art, he talks about literature, he talks about sociology. So all these disciplines need curiosity as a beginning point, as a starting point. And then this essay is called The Cat That Curiosity Couldn't Kill. And the cats that he's talking about are the scientists. So the scientists are these cats, and the cat is a word that we use in other senses as well, are interested in discovering, creating, collaborating, and all of it is driven by curiosity. So I started reading this essay. It's a really simple, wonderful essay. And he also talks about this notion of symbiosis. And he gives this example of these birds, he calls them tick birds, actually oxpeckers, and the rhinoceros. So the story he tells is there's a symbiotic relationship between these two creatures. The oxpeckers, they eat the ticks that settle on the body of the rhinos. So they provide a service for the rhino, and it becomes food for the tick. So it's sort of a symbiotic relationship. And he talks about this in the context of society and science. What he says is, while scientists get to scratch that itch of curiosity through their work, because that's what drives them, we get as social beings, as society, we get the benefits of the technologies, the products, the science that they develop. And it's an interesting idea. And I got curious about these oxpeckers and rhinos, so I started reading up some more about them. And they settle in, it's not just rhinos, but in the sub-Saharan African desert, you find them on giraffes, you find them on hippopotamus, they're all over the place, on zebras, they're everywhere. So they gather on these animals, and there is some benefit that they provide. It gets a little deeper, so my curiosity led me to some pretty interesting, bizarre stuff. So if there's a predator, maybe a big cat that might chase one of these animals while their noses are in the ground eating grass, they call. So there's a warning thing. Monkeys do that as well. They call, and that's why the animals know that they need to disappear. So they do provide a service. But then I started reading some more and discovered that these birds, they're not really after the ticks that they eat of these large animals. They're actually after blood. So they really want is the blood. And so what they start doing is they only eat the large sticks, which are fat with blood. And sometimes if they find a wound, they start going after the wound instead of the tick. So it's not really a symbiotic relationship. It's more like a parasitic relationship. And they do this stuff like this. But let's move on. Let's look at this. This is a better picture of nature. It's a better picture of nature. So cat that curiosity couldn't kill. So what I started realizing, as we look at pictures of nature, as we look at what's happening in the natural world, we realize that things are a lot more complex than they appear to be. Symbiotic relationships can be parasitic at times. They can be a lot more bizarre than you might imagine. And let's go back to Herbert Simon again. So Simon talks about curiosity and its connection to creativity. And he talks about experts and problem solvers. What do? Well, they accumulate knowledge. Their curiosity leads them to learn new stuff. They gather knowledge either through being out in nature, through reading papers, through experiments, etc. They gather new knowledge. They accumulate what he calls chunks. And you've all heard the phrase, the term that you need 10 years, 10,000 hours of work before you can be a craftsman or a master or an expert at something. So he talks about 50,000 chunks of information. And he refers to them as cues. So each of these chunks of information that your curiosity gets you are cues. And when you're solving a problem, you might see, okay, in this problem, there is a cue that I see that might connect back to this chunk of knowledge back in my mind, and I might have an idea to solve this problem. So this is how Herbert Simon connects this idea of curiosity to creativity. Back to the sub-Saharan African desert. So one of the things that nature does is nature offers wonder. I mean, look at this photograph. You cannot not be in awe, in amazement of these photographs. And there are other things all around in nature. So I'm not making this up. This is given to me by myrmecologists and scientists. If you weighed, I don't know how you do this, all the humans on the planet, and you weighed all the ants on the planet, they might weigh just as much as us or more. Isn't that amazing? I mean, I was stunned when I heard that. There's more stuff like that in nature. All right, so this octopus, right? So octopus, we all know octopi are masters at camouflage. Unless you actually really see that closely, it's hard to imagine how that thing snuck into that coral. They do incredible things. So octopi not only change color, but the texture of their skin in a matter of seconds. If that doesn't inspire awe, I'm not sure what will. Or swarms of birds. There are at least four species of birds in here, and they do not crash into each other. If I'm walking in Manhattan, I'll probably rub elbows with, push, cudgel, like hundreds of people. So nature can inspire enormous amounts of awe. Even just thinking about how many species exist on the planet. Do we know how many species are on this planet? There's some that I read there was an article in Nature that said there's 8.7 million plus or minus 2. Like, not very accurate, right? Someone said, oh, it could be 30 million. And then the latest thing I read was 1 trillion. So we have no idea, we have no clue how many species we share the planet with. We know we are one, represented by the fantastic Mr. Darwin. Just these facts in nature leads us to this notion of awe. Right? And this awe, curiosity, wonder are the kinds of things that should inspire us. That's where we get our bits of data. So this is Heidi Fisher. She works with me at Arizona State University. She's written an essay called The Utility of Awe. And she talks about this, the experience of awe. What does it do to us? It brings us back into nature, especially awe that you see in nature. It gives us kind of secrets to survival. How are we here? Why are we here? Why is there water here? But these are positive emotions. So psychology for the longest time has studied negative psychology, has studied trauma, has studied problems, has studied things as negative emotions, but there's a ton of research these days on positive emotions. And awe and wonder and curiosity, these are positive emotions. And what she says is they have the ability to create the conditions that are conducive to innovation. Yeah. Very important for us, right? To be creative, to be innovative, really critical. So being in nature, being curious, looking at stuff, being in awe of the stuff you see around you, leads us to one other idea. And this is Janine Benyus. Janine Benyus wrote this book called Biomimicry, Innovation Inspired by Nature. She defines biomimicry as the conscious emulation of nature's genius. She wrote this book, and you can spend some time in nature, look carefully, listen, and you can learn a lot. So to give you a quick example, we all have seen biomimicry around us. We may or may not know of it. So these are what you see in this video here, are burdock seeds. If you look carefully at them, they have these little spines. There are little hooks at the end of these spines. Right? Those spines are attached to animals that get too close to them, like this handsome goat. Right? There's a Swiss scientist called George de Mestral who would take his dog out for a walk every day in the forest. He'd come back, and the dog would be covered with these burdock seeds. Right? He has to painstakingly take each one of those things off. He said, these damn things are driving me crazy. I'm going to put them under a microscope and see what the hell's going on. He put them under the microscope, and he saw a hook on the seed that attaches to the hair of the dog. So he said, oh, this is like a hook and loop fastening system, a.k.a. Velcro. So Velcro is inspired by nature. But Velcro stops at a certain stage. What we're trying to do at Arizona State University is go a step beyond. So Velcro is an incredible idea. It's very creative. It's truly innovative, inspired by nature, but it's made with nylon, petroleum-based product. Can we go a step beyond? Can we make it with non-toxic materials? Can we make it biodegradable materials? What we're trying to do at ASU is to use this idea of biomimicry to come up with sustainable solutions, interesting, innovative solutions. Back to Herbert Simon. I love this guy. So he also wrote about design. Well, how does he define design? He says everyone designs. So he refers to design as courses of action. What's the aim? There's an ethic in here. Convert existing situations into preferred ones. Make the world a better place for all, right? For the Fijians, for everyone. So at Arizona State University, where I used to work with Tom, we have this program called Innovation Space that Tom just talked about. What we are trying to do in this program, we've been running this for about 10 years, is to create a studio environment, create a creative condition where students can learn from each other, they can be curious, they can come up with new ideas. We work with corporations and focus on important problems. So it's a program that was put together as a cooperation between the design school, which is my home discipline. I'm trained as a product designer, the School of Engineering, where Tom worked, the School of Business, and our somewhat new, 10 years old, School of Sustainability. So what we do is we bring together students from these disciplines. This is one of my happiest teams ever. This is Michelle, she's a business student. Edmund is an industrial designer. Jake from sustainability. Mark from graphic design. And Jenna from engineering. So these students work with me over 2 semesters. So 1 year long. I had them as a fantastic captive audience. And we learn the design process in these cross-functional teams, right? To learn curiosity. So when I come into this program as a business student, I may not know anything about industrial design or about graphic design or engineering. So they learn from each other and in the process of solving problems, bring that curiosity to the table. And we use this model of innovation that Tom and I worked on together and have written about that we call integrated innovation. This asks 4 key questions. What you're designing, what you're creating, the new thing that you're working on, does it bring value to people? Is it valuable? That's one question. Second question. Can you make the damn thing? Is it possible through engineering? Does the technology exist to make this happen? Can it be manufactured? Are the materials there? Third question, does it make sense from a business perspective? Does it line up with the strategic vision of the corporation? Will there be any profit? The last question, and the most important question, which is asked probably the least, is it good for society and the environment? And we think true innovation is at the middle of that Venn diagram. Gets smaller and smaller. It's a hard target to reach, but that's what we try to teach the students in this program, to try and do innovation that is responsible. Back to Herbert Simon. Talked about creativity. So how does he define it? He defines it as a behavior. So it's something that all of us can do. It's not something that people are born with. All of us are creative, right? We make this mistake of defining folks in the arts and design as the creative disciplines. That's crazy. That's stupid. You need engineers who are creative. The only thing that's bizarre is creative finance. Right? That's a loaded term. But apart from that, we all need to be creative in what we do to do it well and to come up with interesting solutions. So the idea for me is to think of creativity, to think of curiosity, think of the idea of cooperation, working in teams, with the goal that we can create sustainable innovations that are inspired by nature. Thank you.